This is a Big 20 review quiz recorded during my Period 7 class. And we're going over question number 4 first. Questions numbers 2 and 4 are always going to be dividing by a power of 10. In this example here, we're dividing by 100, all right, which has 2 zeros. When we divide by 100, we're going to divide by moving the decimal 2 place values to the left, which is going to make this 2 place values less in value. If you're dividing by 100, it becomes 2 place values less. So this becomes 0.73857. Now, my general rule in class would be to show at least 2 decimal places, which would mean you would take this and you would round, but since this is a Big 20, and all we're asked to do is divide by 100, you need to leave all the numbers. Don't round on the first 4 questions. You need to leave them with all the numbers there. Don't do any rounding on this particular Big 20 question. On our exact quiz, we had 81.9 divided by 10, which would be moving the decimal 1 place value, which would make this 8.19.
That's what I had to mark it wrong.
And that would be the final answer. Now, if it was marked wrong, please remember, and this is being recorded, it was Mr. Lowell who graded this class's quizzes. So if it was marked wrong, check with Mr. Lowell on that, okay? Okay, number 5 on the Big 20 quiz asks you to convert a fraction to a decimal. Now, to do that, you are going to be doing division, and you take the bottom number, put on the outside of the long division, top number on the inside. On a calculator, it would be top divided by the bottom. But since we're not using a calculator, its bottom goes into the top like this. All right, now 8 does not go into 3, so we put a 0 there. Hopefully that one doesn't look like a D. All right, bring the decimal up. Put a 0 in here. 8 goes into 30. I'd say 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. I subtract that and get a remainder of 6. I have to keep going, because we keep going with these until we either hit a repeating or hit a termination in the decimal. Bring down the 0. 8 goes into 60 7 times. And this is one of my most missed multiplication facts. 7 times 8 is 56. I often want to say 54 for some reason. But 7 times 8 is 56. Subtract this, I get a result of 4. Bring down another 0. 8 goes to 40 5 times, which does give us a remainder of 0. So we are finally done with this one. And that is the result of the decimal version of that fraction. Again, as a general rule in class, I would say you would show at least 2 decimal places. If all you're asked to do is convert this to a decimal, show all 3. You have to keep going for the Big 20 until it either terminates or repeats. Okay, number 6 is all about converting a decimal to a simplified fraction. Now, to do that, you count how many place values there are in the decimal beyond the decimal point there. There's 2 place values, 1, 2 here. So I'm going to write that number I'm going to take away that 0 leading point, I'm going to take away the decimal, write it without the decimal, and put it over a 1 with 2 zeros. 1, 2 zeros. As many zeros as there are decimal places. In this case, this cannot be simplified any further, so that would be the final answer. There's no common factors between 43 and 100. And that was the one that was actually on the quiz I gave you. This one, again, 2 decimal places, so I'd have 72 over 1 with 2 zeros. Both of those are divisible by 4. And I end up getting 19 over 25 for this one, so that one would need to be simplified. Here I have one with 1, 2, 3 decimal places, so this would be a 125 over 1,000. And it turns out both of these are divisible by 25. So we go divide them both by 25, and we end up getting 5 over, what was it, 40? But now they're still both divisible by 5, which means I need to keep reducing, and I end up getting 1 over 8. That would be the final answer there. Now, it's also possible you might get something like 0.002. These do count as place values. These placeholders here, they do count. So this would be a 2 over a 1 with 3 zeros. That's 2 thousandths. It makes sense if you remember that this is the thousandths place value. This is the hundredths place value. This is the tenths place value, which is why you're putting it over 10, 100, or 1,000, depending on how many place values you have in your decimal. All right, number 10 is always going to be a percent of a number. It might have the units of dollars, it might not. So that might change. In this one, in this particular case, I do have the units on there. There are some twists with that. But for the moment, let's say it's always going to be some sort of percent of a number. First step, convert the percent to a decimal by dividing it by 100. Pen's not responding now. All right. So to convert that, since I am dividing by 100, 6. My pen's not responding now. Hold on. So I'm going to divide by 100, which for 6.5 to divide by 100 needs you need to move the decimal 2 places to the left. It's kind of like our numbers 2 and 4 from the front there. You then put a placeholder 0 in here. This would be unacceptable as an answer for converting to the decimal because I see 2 decimal points. You can't leave it like this. This is showing work, but it is not the final answer. The final answer would be 0.065 for converting to a decimal. But that's not the final step for this question. We have to then multiply that decimal times the whole number, which might be easier since we're doing this without a calculator to line it up vertically like this. 5 times 5 is 25, carry the 2. 5 times 9 is 45, with plus 2 gives me 47, carry the 4. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 4, I get 14. Placeholder 0, 6 times 5 is 30, carry the 3. 6 times 9 is 54, plus 3 is 57, carry the 5. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 5 is 17. I would then add these two together. I get 5, 7, 11, carry the 1. Now, once we've multiplied with a decimal there, we have to count the number of decimal places in the multiplication. There were 3 decimal places, so I need to bring my decimal over 3. My answer here would be a 19.175. Now this, if there was no dollar sign, this would be your final answer. But since there is a dollar sign here, you do need to include that dollar sign in front of the 19. Also, is there really anything as half a cent? No. So in this case, we'd have to round to make this $19.18. This would be the final answer I expect on the Big 20 if there's a dollar sign. If there's no dollar sign, then this would be the final answer. Okay, number 20 is always going to be a dividing by a decimal. To do the work for this, you would start off by putting the 0.15, the second number, in the front. The first number goes underneath the decimal, the division bar there. Now, you can't technically divide by a decimal. So what you need to do is you need to convert this to a whole number by moving the decimal over twice. But to make that fair, you have to do the same thing here. Move the decimal over twice over here. So instead of doing 0.15 divided by, 21.875 divided by 0.15, I'm now going to do that with a 15 and a 2,187.5. Now, 15 does not go into 2. 15 goes into 21 once. So I subtract 15 from the 21, I get 6. Bring down the 8. 15 goes into 68 4 times. 4 times 15, you can do 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2, you get 60. I just happen to know 4 times 15 is 60. Subtract that, I get an 8. Bring down the 7. If 4 times 15 is 60, 5 times would be 75. 8 times would bring up to 90, which would be too high, so this has got to be 7. 7 times, I said that was a 75. Sorry, 5 times. 5 times is 75. I subtract that, I get a 12. Bring down the 5. 15 goes into 125. I'm not sure. It goes into 150 10 times. So let's say 70 plus 35. It's 105. No, it's probably gonna be 8. 8 times 5 is 40. Carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8. Plus 4 is 12. Subtract that, I get a remainder of 5. Now, technically, you guys should keep going with this. Put a 0, keep going like that. Hopefully, I won't give you one that has to go this far with this many numbers on this. It is possible. But you will need to keep going on the quiz until you get a repeating or terminating decimal. And I believe at this point I will actually get a repeating, because 3 times 15 is going to give me a 45, which when I subtract that from 50, I get a 5. So I'm going to get a 0.83 repeating there. Hopefully at this stage I shouldn't have a repeating decimal for your answers on that, but it is possible. And this would be the final answer. I would accept, because this does have... Now, I do need you to either work it out to a terminating decimal or a repeating decimal. So if you do show me this, if you kind of go like this with a dot, dot, dot like that, that's showing me that it repeats. That would be fine too. Okay, number 13 is always going to be about subtracting fractions. And I really could go through this in about 4 or 5 different ways. There are ways of doing it with the whole numbers, but chances are, if you're in this class, chances are you are making a mistake when you do it with the splitting up the whole numbers and the fractions. You're going to end up with errors. One of the best ways to avoid errors is just to work with the improper fractions. So we take the 8 times the 4, that denominator, and add the result to the top there, and we end up getting 33 over 4 as our improper fraction version of that same fraction. Then we would do the 1 times the 2, the denominator, add that to 1, and we get 3 halves for the other improper fraction version. Now, whenever you're adding or subtracting, you have to have common denominators. In this case, the least common denominator is pretty easy to see. It would be the 4. So I could multiply this by 2 up the top and bottom, and this would become 33 over 4 minus 6 over 4. which would give me 27 over 4. It'd just be the top numbers subtracted. 33 minus the 6 will give you the 27. The 4 just gets kind of carried along because the denominator there. Now 4 goes into 27. It's actually 6 times. 6 times 4 is 24. A remainder of 3. This becomes your whole number, the 6. This becomes the numerator. This remains as your denominator of 4. Now, that's one way if you're having trouble finding a common denominator. Another way would be to work with the butterfly method. Here we have 3 over 2. The butterfly method says you multiply the diagonals. 2 times 33 gives me 66. 4 times 3 is going to give me 12. You bring this operation up, and you end up multiplying the denominators. Notice how that makes this kind of look like a butterfly, which is why they call this the butterfly method. All right. Now, this is going to become 66 minus 12 over the 4 times the 2, which is the 8. 66 minus 12 is 54 over 8. You would then convert this to a mixed number. 8 goes into 54 6 times, which would give you a remainder of 6. This would be your whole number. This would be your new numerator. So you would get 6 and 6/8. 6/8 does reduce to 3/4, so you end up with the same answer.